Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Tuesday. Today's August the 5th, 2025. It's a hot one here in South Louisiana. But after yesterday's dry air, it still doesn't feel too bad out there. But with the extra moisture that's currently in place, it does appear that we're starting to see at least some scattered showers and thunderstorms developing along the coast of Vermilion, Iberia, and St. Mary, right about where we expected those thunderstorms to start developing. And some of that will move inland a little bit later on today. So back to the old summertime weather after a nice break there for Sunday and Monday, kind of a rare break that we don't normally see here during the month of August. But it is kind of hot out there, partly cloudy skies here in the hub city, 88 degrees the temp. That heat index is at 96 with the dew point now at 73. Humidity at 63%, light breeze out of the north at 3, and the pressure's at 30.10. Again, we do have some scattered showers and thunder showers that are starting to develop here along the coast over parts of Iberia, Vermilion, and into St. Mary Parish. For the most part, the rain has stayed south of the intracoastal waterway, but some of these showers are going to start to work their way up toward the Highway 90 corridor. The farther west you go, the more the showers and thunderstorms have been in the offshore waters. Let's go ahead and pull up the Hammond radar too. And you can see that there's other enhanced showers and thunderstorms there off the coast east of New Orleans, around the Chandelier Islands, and then south of Mobile, and then pushing out into the offshore waters south of Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes. So we're going to continue to see some of that as we go through time. Showers and thunderstorms most likely are going to be developing kind of in this particular area, at least for the Acadiana region, but I would say most of southeastern Louisiana will see a better chance for rain. But the farther west you live, the less the rain chances are going to be. Now, as we look a little bit farther away on the radar here, you can see there's quite a bit of rain there along the Florida Panhandle, a bit of a trough that kind of digs from the Midwest southward to South Mississippi, and along and east of that trough, we've seen those showers and thunderstorms. So locally here in Lafayette, we're still seeing a mix of sun and clouds, so it is a pretty nice day, especially if you go farther inland. Alexandria, I know, was down in the 60s earlier this morning. Still kind of dry there, but you folks up in Cenla are going to be moistening up once again, and we're going to get back to the summertime weather coming up in just a little bit. So as we look at the U.S. satellite here, couple of things going on. Got more of an upper trough that kind of stretches from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf Coast. So ahead of that, we're seeing the showers and thunderstorms in this particular area. Dry air south of the front. There's still a bit of a frontal boundary that kind of stretches there and then kind of down like that and then kind of back up like that. So we've had that little push of some drier air that came in and brought us a pleasant day yesterday, but that is still holding on to much of central and western portions of Louisiana. So enjoy that lower dew point, those lower dew points, better comfort there across western Louisiana. So along that front, we do have a ripple of low pressure. It's right about in here. And that's going to continue to produce those showers and thunderstorms. Then farther along that front, we've got another low that's going to try to develop off the Carolina coastline, kind of mix in with some other tropical moisture coming in from the east, and we'll discuss that coming up here in just a little bit. But for boaters, not a bad day out there. Light winds out of the west-northwest. They'll be shifting more southerly, though, later today and tonight. Seas will be running about 1 to 2 feet. Really pretty on the beaches too, but there are some thunderstorms out in the offshore waters there from Panama City, and kind of a gray day there with some rain coming down there around Orange Beach, and still kind of gray too over toward Dauphin Island, but then things clear up a little bit more as you work your way westward toward Cocodrie, and a mix of sun and clouds there along the Texas Gulf Coast. Bayou Vista over near Galveston, looking okay there, but there will be some scattered thunderstorms in the offshore waters coming up in just a little bit. So let's get to the active weather first, and we have Dexter. And Dexter is just barely hanging on as a tropical storm, and you can see here in those latter visible satellite images that the wind shear is really taking its toll. In fact, most of the convection has been blown away, and the core of the center of low pressure there is definitely exposed. And you see that milky cloudiness that's up on top of that, up to the north, coming off Cape Cod and off of New England and Canada. That is some smoke from the wildfires there over Canada. That's been quite a problem across the Great Lakes states and much of the northeastern part of the country here over the last several weeks. But Dexter is just, as I said, just kind of hanging on. Winds are at 40 miles per hour. It'll probably hold on as a tropical storm. Might increase its wind speed a little bit, but that's not real certain right now. But as far as it's staying a tropical system and maybe transitioning to a subtropical system is more likely. And sometimes you can get some decent winds in the core of a subtropical storm too. So most of our model intensity guidance is staying under 50 knots, which would be under 60, 55 to 60 mile per hour. But most of them kind of hold it right there at a minimal tropical storm. And fortunately, it's moving over the North Atlantic into the colder waters, so at this point, it doesn't seem to be an issue for anybody except for shipping lanes out in the North Atlantic. So Dexter is going to hang on for a couple of days or so, and then you see that orange spot there off the east coast of the U.S. We talked about this a lot last week about the possibility of a parade of storms as a frontal boundary kind of hugs the east coast, and that extends southwestward across the northern Gulf Coast. And a lot of times when you get these fronts that push offshore, you do get low pressure to develop, and sometimes they gain those tropical characteristics. We've also got another tropical wave that's southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. That's going to take a couple of days to move out into the central Atlantic, but most of the models are indicating some development, big-time differences in solutions, especially when it comes to track. Most of the models do curve this kind of in the direction of that orange area there over the central Atlantic, but there are a couple of models that drag it maybe over toward the Bahamas and closer to Florida coming up in about a week and a half. And then we've got another tropical wave that's coming off the east, or rather the west coast of Africa, that looks like it might be taking more of a southerly route toward the Caribbean. We'll talk more about that and why that would happen, why it wouldn't curve more toward the northeast. But the little area that we're watching here off of the Atlantic coast. So we got a frontal boundary here, and there's a little bit of a low that's trying to develop. And then you got some tropical moisture that's kind of pulling in from the southeast. So the combination of that might get something going here over the next couple of days off the Carolina coast. And at this point, the steering currents, if it stays down here to the south, it'll probably kind of linger out here over the waters and maybe push northward over toward the Carolinas. Whether or not it gets caught up in the westerlies and shot back out to sea, that is yet to be seen, as some of the models kind of have it just kind of hugging the coast here over the next few days. So it doesn't look like it's going to be anything strong, but when you're close to tropical weather like that, you can get some intense rainfall amounts. So the Carolinas are going to be watching out for that. Farther toward the southwest, a tropical wave is moving westward into the Pacific. It brought a lot of heavy rain over Nicaragua and Honduras yesterday, and some of that extending into Belize and Guatemala. But that will have a chance for some more development as it moves there into the Pacific waters. And I think as it goes off toward the west, it'll have a chance of becoming a tropical system here over the next several days. There's a little bit more of that moisture there north of the Caribbean. That right there could kind of slide its way into that low pressure area that's trying to form off the Carolina coastline. And the rest of the tropics into the Caribbean really not showing a whole lot. You got a little bit of a tropical wave. Looks like it's about right about in there. And it looks like you got maybe a little bit of a tropical wave that's kind of working its way there near the Windward Islands. But farther out in the Atlantic, that's where I think we're going to see more of the action here coming up over the next couple of weeks, as we've got a decent tropical wave right about in here. This is the one that's forecast to kind of push out into the Atlantic and could have a chance for some development sometime next week. And then another robust wave is coming off the African coast, and some of the models are showing that to take more of a southerly track, maybe off toward the Caribbean, as more of a big ridge of high pressure wants to develop north of that. So we'll have to wait and see if that happens, but at least one model is indicating a pretty intense tropical system moving across the Caribbean and possibly sneaking its way over toward the Yucatan Channel. But that wouldn't be for a long time down the road. That's about 2 weeks down the road, so that's a little too far out when it comes to any accuracy. But that other wave there has the potential for some development. We saw that with the National Hurricane Center's forecast. So this area here that's circled in orange most likely is going going to have a better chance for some development once it gets out into this area. And then this other tropical wave that's here over the African coast, I think is going to take a little bit more of a westerly track, heading more toward the Windward Islands and possibly into the Caribbean. Of course, that's where most of our tropical systems either develop or pass. This is the map that shows the number of named storms that have passed through the areas over the past 100 years. There are a few that run across the northern part of the Gulf Coast, but the bigger areas, of course, are out in the Atlantic and along the East Coast this time of the year. So anything that wants to try to develop out there would try to make a run there, either for the middle part of the Atlantic or going into the Caribbean. So what I want to start with here is the Euro model from earlier today. And the reason is because I'm sure this is starting to make its little circulations on Facebook and on social media as well. But the area of low pressure that we're looking at, this right here is Dexter. And then we'll also watch for another low to kind of develop right there off the East Coast. But I also want you to focus on that particular low that's over the central part of the Atlantic. So we'll go ahead and fast forward that. So notice how Dexter kind of rolls its way off toward the east. And by the time we get into, looks like the latter part of the week, it looks like this is coming up for, what is this, Friday. Perhaps we're going to be seeing something trying to get going in that particular area there. But notice the wave that's out over the middle part of the Atlantic really doesn't show any signs. That wave would be right about there by the time we get into Friday and continuing to move off toward the west. But you see another wave out here to the far east. That's the one that I'm a little bit more concerned with as we go through time. So we'll go ahead and fast forward it a little bit more. And again, you see maybe a little development there off the east coast of the U.S. This is on Sunday. And then watch the little wave that starts to move there into the middle part of the Atlantic. So this is the wave that we're talking about that has the chance of maybe a medium chance for development over the central part of the Atlantic. But you see it there. So that's going to round, at least according to the Euro model, that's going to round that ridge of high pressure and continue to move off toward the north. But I want you to notice there in the Caribbean now, as we go into next week, this is getting into, let's see, we're at August 15th, so we're about 10 days from now, and you can see there's a pretty significant system forecast to cruise its way into the Caribbean, and of course, that is not where we want to see any tropical weather, not only because it has a better chance of getting into the Gulf, but also that's that region that has the high tropical cyclone heat content where there's a potential for some rapid intensification. But again, this is all the way out. Looks like this is what, Tuesday the 19th. So this is way, way, way far out. So most likely this would not be the scenario, but having some of those tropical systems kind of tracking their way a little bit farther toward the south would probably have a better chance for moving into the Caribbean. So that's why we're a little more concerned about that. Let's move on to the GFS and see if it agrees. I want to go ahead and rewind it here real quick. So this is where we are right now. You see Dexter there off the east coast, and then you start to see that little low develop there west of Africa, but it doesn't really hold together too well as it moves toward the northern Virgin Islands. And the GFS, rather than having that wave curved more northward, it has it sliding a little bit farther over toward the Bahamas. So that would be a little bit more of a concern for us here locally, because anything that would cross over Florida could possibly get into the Gulf. But that's where we're looking at there, and that is for this coming Saturday. So that is a little concern, rather next Saturday. So anything that would move there. But notice that as we go a little bit farther out, that kind of rolls inland, but you don't really see a whole lot coming off the African coast, at least nothing that the Euro was forecasting pushing in to portions of the Caribbean. So that's good news that we don't have anything agreeing there. Maybe another system trying to develop around the backside of that ridge of high pressure somewhere in the Atlantic. So a little bit of a disagreement farther down the road when it comes to the GFS compared to the Euro. Dexter, according to the Canadians, slides out into the Atlantic. You get a little bit more of a low to try to develop off of the Carolina coastline, but it looks like the Canadian model is kind of slow. It's only taken us out to 60 hours here. Usually it goes out 10 days at 240, so that one looks like it's incomplete. So we'll go ahead and move on with the Icon model. Icon shows Dexter moving away, shows another low developing off the Carolina coast. The wave that's out over the central Atlantic does show some development, but it moves north of the Caribbean islands. And by the time we get to the 7-day, which is as far out as that goes, you can see that a tropical system could possibly be there. Sorry, I didn't realize I had that up that whole time. Tropical system could possibly be somewhere here moving toward the continental U.S. And then, of course, there's that other wave out here to the southwest, if this telestrator would ever work. That one, again, showing more of a sign of being influenced by that ridge of high pressure here, which, again, would shove that a little bit farther toward the west. So very speculative right now, but it is showing signs that tropical weather is going to be getting a little bit more active here over the next several days and in the coming weeks. Now, the reason why I'm the most concerned about any of these tropical waves taking that southerly route and perhaps getting into portions of the Caribbean is this area here, Southern Gulf, Western Caribbean, and areas around the Bahamas. Those are where the highest water temperatures are right now, and it's also a place where that water, those warm waters go very, very deep. So that is the most concerning out of anything. If any tropical weather were to try to cross into this area, if it has the right atmospheric conditions, you can get some rapid intensification. And I do believe perhaps that earlier run of the Euro model getting something there, you notice how it really started to strengthen over the northern part of the Caribbean. Could that be it? Tapping into some of this heat content that's out there. That is the possibility. Although, again, that is still 10 to 15 days out on the computer model, so a lot can change between now and then. But the Euro soundings, or at least the Euro tropical formation forecast, showing that we'll probably have some new action off the East Coast here within today through this coming Monday, and then down over the central part of the Atlantic, it looks like we're going to see a pretty good chance for some development there. CIRA is reduced quite a bit in the tropical development zone west of Africa, so you would have a little bit more of a chance for a couple of those tropical waves maybe getting themselves organized before they move into the western Atlantic and kind of run into some wind shear there. But over the course of time, we're going to be seeing the wind shear kind of dropping off, as well as the Saharan dust, which most likely will start to dissipate a little bit more as we get into September. And of course, when you have low wind shear and you don't have a whole bunch of Saharan dust out there, that's when tropical weather can really ramp up quickly. And that's generally why we have more activity peaking out in the early part of September, and then those upper-level winds start to get a little bit stronger, especially as we get into October over the northern part of the Atlantic. But the Gulf and the Caribbean is usually still open for business during October, and then in November it usually kind of switches to the Caribbean. Of course, back in 2024, we had Hurricane Milton. That was a pretty decent hurricane that moved across the southern Gulf, and that was in November. And of course, it was more of a going from the west to the east, which is what we don't normally see with tropical weather. But as we get into the latter part of the hurricane season, stuff that's developing over the Bay of Campeche or the Western Caribbean do tend to turn more toward the northeast rather than the northwest. So there will be a lot more action in the Atlantic coming up over the next several weeks. We're just crossing over into August, so we're going to see a big upturn here, most likely going up toward the September 10th. The peak date of the hurricane season. And Colorado State University is still calling for 16 named storms. That is including the 4 that we've already had, but there is going to be another update from Colorado State. Their mid-season forecast is going to be updated tomorrow, so hopefully we'll have that in time for Let's Talk Tropics, and I'll be able to show you that for tomorrow. But they're still expecting 16 named storms, and I don't really think you're going to see any big changes in the forecast that comes out tomorrow. So still expecting an average to above average season, but as we all know, it only takes one to really screw up your day, right? Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications if you wouldn't mind. And please listen to my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. By the way, if you didn't know, these are all locally owned radio stations right here in Acadiana. Also, if you want, go ahead and follow my social media pages, both on Facebook and X. I put little updates here and there with what's going on, especially with tropical weather that doesn't deserve a whole video on there. So occasionally I'll get some updates on Facebook and X. And of course, thanks to everyone who has subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today, including all my new subscribers here since the hurricane season began. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you Wednesday morning for Acadiana Weather Today at 7 o'clock right here on YouTube.